Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Rachel Aukes. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. How did I do on your last name, by the way? Was I close?
You did perfect.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I'm very impressed because 9 out of 10 will slaughter it, try to shrink it down to one syllable or turn me into an animal of ox or something. Yeah, you never know. So yeah, you did great.
Awesome. You're like, it's Aukes, guys. Come on.
There,
I,
kiss. You get a kiss every time you say it. How can you
yeah,
go
yeah,
wrong?
that's funny. As I had a couple people a while back. I think it was like season one. It was like 3 weeks apart. I had somebody from like Norway. I had somebody from Finland, and their names looked very similar, but they were said very differently. And I flip flopped them. So ever since, and that was like back before you could like very very easily on YouTube like change everything, and then just re-download the video. So it probably took my poor tech guy Dave. Hi Dave. Like it must have taken like 3.5 hours just to fix a like literally like 5 second flop. So ever since then, he's like, "Can you just ask people how to say their name beforehand?" I'm like, I do it every time now. So thank you, Dave, for helping us out. I like us to remain friends because he doesn't get paid except for in books. So books and love. But Rachel, we'll get started with that first question there for you. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
All right. So I've always been a reader. Like I think every writer would say that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why we started writing is because of
for
our
sure.
love for the written word. As a kid, I started writing, loved it, wrote like crap because all kids, when you're still learning all the ropes, kind of write crappy. So, but I gave that up, went to college to get a job that paid. So
Yep.
I just quit writing altogether and just became a reader. Went into IT and that kind of stuff to keep me busy for a while, and it did pay the bills, but wasn't very fulfilling. So back in 2009, I decided, I've got all these ideas just kind of trying to drive me insane. So why not try to get a few of them out on paper?
Yeah.
And of course, I did everything wrong. I started with a novel. I should have started with some short stories, really get things under my belt. But no, I like to just jump into the deep end and yeah, it took me over a year and in about 20 drafts of the first chapter to write my
Wow.
first book. And even then, once I sold it, the editor said, okay, this first chapter starts in completely the wrong spot. Let's just delete it. So yeah, I had a lot to learn on the first books, but so that first book came out in 2011. It was with a small press who's defunct now. And that was fantasy, kind of an urban fantasy type
Oh, cool.
story, out of print right now, but I got the rights back, so I need to
Oh, that's
get it
awesome.
cleaned up and put
Yeah.
back out. So since 2011, I have a little over 40 books out, little 2 dozen short stories. Been with a lot of different publishers. Like I said, I started with that real small one first. Then my next series I sold to Simon and Schuster. That was completely different experience. But I'm all good. I learned so much. And by the
Yeah.
time I was done with that series, I tried self-publishing and wrote the story that I just, it was one of those stories I knew it wasn't going to be very commercial. It was a zombie book, post-apocalyptic. It was called 100 Days in Deadland. So I knew from the get-go I was going to self-publish it. So I wrote it exactly how I wanted it, knowing that it probably wasn't going to be fit with any house, because it was a reimagining of Dante's Inferno, the
Oh,
classic
that's cool.
poem. Yeah, just instead of in hell, it was basically putting hell on earth.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
and it did great. It surprised me. It was the first where before I made some money, but this was where I thought it was the first time I said, "Oh, I could probably do this full time."
Yeah, yeah.
And I kept working at the day job for another 5 years as I put out more books and more series. But yes, in 2018, I went full time. And even now, I kind of do some my little side passion projects, the oddball projects. I'll self publish, and then everything else is with publishers, just because I don't have enough time in the day to do everything. Because when you self publish,
Yeah.
you are, when you're done writing that book, you are also the project manager of figuring out who's going to edit it and cover art and audio and all of that stuff. You're working as a publisher, and it's a very different
Yeah.
hat, which I enjoy all of that. But yes, there's not enough time in the day, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to focus. My focus is on on writing the books. And I love it. But I do wish there was more time in the day, about 3 months more every year. And it would
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
be just ideal for me getting my projects done.
yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at now is 40 books out, 2 dozen short stories, and a lot more on the way.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I started counting your books on like Amazon and Goodreads, and then I had to stop. I was like losing count. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. But I just think that's cool, that you were able to have different experiences, with different presses and, and different companies, as well as, be able to self-publish. I really would like to do that. I'd like to do what, like, you do, what Brandon does, Sanderson, with like the hybrid. There's certain things that, I'd love just to get out there and not have, just a story and not really have to deal with anything else. So there's other stuff that I like my babies, that I definitely have passion projects that, I want to steer myself. So I think that I think you're in a great spot. That's just what people always ask me, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to do what Rachel does. So that's really cool.
It's so fulfilling. I mean, the best and worst part about being a writer and all is you can decide what to do and be your own boss and all of that. And, it's great because of the freedom, but it's also, that means there's, you don't necessarily have that guidance there. And you are accountable for your own decisions. And some
Yeah.
people really don't like that, because there's a lot riding on it. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful. And I love the hybrid model. To me is the best, because some through the publishers where I know they have a wider reach than me. And then,
Yep.
my little oddball projects that I can do, like this spring, I released a series of novellas that was just 1950s style campy science fiction.
Oh, cool.
Just was a blast to write, super over the top silly. This poor schmuck from in a college, he was learning how to be a truck driver, gets kidnapped by basically a purple alien jelly bean. And it's just silly, fun stuff. But we all need those little palate cleansers, and
Yeah.
it's fun to write. You need to do some of those things every now and then.
I totally agree. There's one anthology that I'm still trying just to get one of my stories for, and I always love the movie Paul, with the guys that I think it was like Seth Rogen. I think it was Paul. It's like the alien, and it was like the two guys from like Hot Fuzz, and whatever the zombie one they did. I'm totally blank right now. And they're like based in the UK or whatever, but like they're so funny, and I'm like, Paul was hilarious, and I was like, I want to write something. So I found an anthology that's basically like like we will take anything that's humorous in terms of alien abductions or aliens or whatever, or outer space. And I was like, I want to set up a guy that basically like thinks he's being abducted and then turns to find this like Paul like alien, and they just go on this like crazy adventure. And I was able to find a really good villain and then a really good like catch-22 thing. And I was like, oh, I gotta get this, because I was laughing so hard, and I was like, I can't wait for people to. I love humorous stuff like that. Terry Pratchett's like one of my favorites, so I think it's always cool. But sci-fi, what's funny, I think to me is always like, I don't know, like fantasy funny is one thing, but sci-fi funny to me is like my type of funny, if that makes sense. So I love like campy sci-fi like that. So I don't know if you've ever
it's
seen.
Always been mine too.
Was it like the Outer Clowns from Space or whatever? And they're just hilarious. My brother and I, they're so campy. I think they're from like the mid 80s, and we watched like the first 4 for Christmas one year, and just like had a blast with it. So yeah,
it's great. And you got like Mystery Science Theater, where you can get
Oh,
caught up on all kinds of the worst sci-fi out there.
Yep.
And Mars Attacks, those kind of movies are just a blast. Yeah, I love it. We all need stuff like that.
Yeah. That's like actually what I didn't even consider, but that actually is like one of my favorite campy, like humorous sci-fi. So that's awesome. No, but that's awesome. I'm just curious, like what like what would like be one lesson that you would maybe tell your past self, in terms of your journey so far? Like what's one thing that you wish you could kind of go back and tell yourself?
I wish I would have taken advantage of when my Deadland book first came out. I wish I would have taken advantage of the rush it had with sales and really work harder on getting more books out faster at that point, because it was a key time, is 2013,
Yep.
2014. Self-publishing was really big on Amazon, and it was the time where it wasn't fully into the rapid release, but it was just hitting that tip. And if I would have done that with my books and series, without a doubt, I would have been able to go, full-time writer 4 years earlier.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just, if I would have put that first rather than just slowly worked on it
yeah.
on evenings and weekends. And yeah, so that would be the thing I'd say is, if it's your passion, go all in. Don't just dabble.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great advice. That's a great answer right there. That's awesome. I always like to ask people that because I always go back to like Lindsay Broker and like Joe Lalo's podcast. And I just feel like when they did like the fantasy and sci-fi marketing one, I know they switched and they had one of the other Joes left, and then they had another female author like come in, and it was really good for marketing. But they're like earlier seasons, I was just surprised. It was right around that time because I just learned so much because I didn't know what indie like publishing was until the year after that. And I actually met Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, Michael J. Sullivan, Brian McCollum was there. Brendan, I forget his name, not Noble, but there was a bunch of people, and like Kevin Hearn was there, and it was so interesting because you had like like traditionally published people, and then Kevin had brought a bunch of indie people, and I was like, I don't know who these people are, and I had such a blast. I went through this all day event like 3 or 4 times. I was there from probably 8:30 in the morning to almost 9:30 at night. And I was just like literally the whole like last 3 hours, I was just talking to all the indie authors about what indie publishing was. And I was just so amazed at, this other side of the industry. And I talked to them, and it was pretty much like several authors there I was talking to, that, really like convinced me that, like I really wanted to do something with self-publishing. And then, like you said, right, like it was really like that kind of gold rush, if you will, from like really, I think it was like 2010. I think Lindsay was talking about when she first started really, really being successful on there. And it was new. And then that was like, Smashwords and all these things were first coming out, but it was so interesting for me to see that shift in the market those several years after that, and it really just it made me think like, oh, self-publishing could totally be worth it, even if it's for certain stories or or certain genres or like you said, right, like something that doesn't quite fit someone else's, but I know somebody will read it. So I think that it was a very interesting experience. But yeah, it was just to me it was interesting because I just had never heard of indie. So, but that to me is like I always talk about that time period of people, and it's crazy the amount of people that like blew up at that time and then now have gotten traditional contracts or for traditional publishing, or they do a hybrid. So to me, it's interesting to really see like Brandon Sanderson having that shift too, and with like Skyward and stuff. So it's just interesting to see how the market's changed since that time within like the last 10 years. But
Oh, it has. It's been a paradigm shift, and it's going to
yeah,
keep changing.
I agree.
Over the next 10 years, I can't imagine. I imagine it's going to change just as much. Just
Yeah,
you've got all the AI tools that are helping put out, fiction faster. So I see
yeah,
the pulp market in general, even though they're not paperback, so it's weird to call it pulp, but
yeah, yeah,
kind of today's ebooks are generally pulp, and so that means you're going to see more and more books come out faster. I attended an AI conference, and it was on publishing industry last fall, and it was interesting because all of the big houses were glomming onto AI tools. They said, yes, for all of our kind of mid-listers and below, we are going to use AI editing tools. We are going to use AI narration for audiobooks. We're going to use AI covers. We're going to focus just our people resources on our biggest bestsellers. And this was, if they're saying that, imagine, pretty soon that's going to become mainstream in the entire indie world, everything. And so what's that going to mean to writers when you have these kind of tools that are whipping something out in 5 minutes versus your supply chain going shortening down. It'll be
yeah.
interesting to see how that plays out.
I've had a lot of talks with people that are that come on here or in different communities, and it's interesting. I as a historian, people don't like it when I say it. I said, well, I said, I think each to their own. I said, but I think what's going to end up happening with the market personally is that I think you're going to see eventually, on people like to argue with me about this, but I think eventually you're going to see different subgenres or categories. I think you'll see authors that only write, without AI. You'll see a hybrid. So you'll see people that use AI, or then I think you'll also see just AI stories that are generated just by AI eventually. And I told a couple people, I go, you might want to put Pandora back in a box, but you can't put Pandora back in a box. And this has been the same. Look at self checkout lanes. I mean, now Walmart here, you can only do like 15 items or less. I'm like, so you guys, don't have any registers open, and then now I have to also go to the self checkout. That's the conveyor belt. I'm like, this is just crazy, But I always look at shifts like that in terms of technology, and as a historian, I've seen that so many times where it's like people want to revert something back, but once the technology has been put out there, it's going to do is be improved upon. And the only thing anybody can do, I think, at any market is try and shift their thought process and their product. So I definitely think that you'll see different categories eventually on Amazon, just letting people know, because everybody has a particular thought, or belief about AI and generative tools, particularly in the art and author community. So I think you'll definitely see those tags eventually, because that's already what I don't know if anybody that's listening has used Adobe, or not Adobe. It's like the Adobe Images. They already are doing that, like AI, and they'll be like AI generated, or or whatever. Like there's different categories already on there. So I don't know. I think that's what you'll see on Amazon and look at different things eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot of people complaining about it and all, but to me, to survive in the industry as of the last probably 10 years, everything keeps changing so fast, as you have to be agile. You have to adapt. So yes, you feel free to complain, but you got to focus on what's it mean to be a writer in the future. Because most readers, I don't think, care one bit of how a cover is made, how is it edited, whether it's written by AI or person. I think there you start getting a few more readers caring, but what they want is a good story. They want a good entertainment. So what can we as writers do to provide that extra value add to where they say, okay, yeah, I would even pay extra for your books. I don't, I would gladly take your books and your cover art and everything that's, not AI, because it gives me a better value add. So as writers, we have to figure out what can make us stand out, because the one thing AI does guarantee is we're going to see a lot more books flooding the Amazon ocean.
Yeah, we already have, right? For sure.
Yeah. And it's been impacting revenue without a doubt.
Yeah. I think like I see people that I think in the past, got to within the first 1,000, on Amazon a lot quicker than recently, and but it's interesting topic that you bring up, because I do think that you really, that's where I'm like, my developmental editor, she's like, you can go publish this, like feel free. She goes, but I really think if you do a couple extra drafts, like whoever reads it is then going to enjoy it that much more and share it that much more. So I definitely was like, well, I want quality over quantity, particularly for starting out. So I was like, I think that's a good point, right? Like, how do you set yourself apart? But I also do think you make a good point, because I just wasn't thinking about that. Like, in terms of, I've been researching a little bit recently. I've definitely seen some artists that I know step up their game. Like Felix Ortiz has always been awesome, but I mean, he is like bussing some things out, him and Sean T. King for like Wraithmark, and their studio and stuff, like with covers. And I'm just like, holy moly, like some of the things they've done. But I definitely agree with you. I think you really got to, hone your craft to be able to compete, because they have flooded the market, right? You have quite a few people now flooding the market, and it's a totally different shift than 2013, I think, like 2011 to 2014. In terms of people writing more, I think there's just a totally different shift. But I do agree with you. If you can really set yourself apart with your writing, or, like, or be more efficient, I think that, or just, talk to people that know more about, designing covers or something like that, and really set yourself apart. I've been really studying a lot. I was originally be an illustrator, but I'm like way out of practice. But there's certain things that I see that I like, where I'm like, oh, I saved them. And then I'm like, if you combine that and then can have somebody, do it better than me, I think you'll get a really dynamic cover. I've seen some absolutely dynamic covers recently. And I think people, in terms of those have really stepped up their game, to help try to center themselves in the market. But I do agree that it's going to be really, really, I think it's going to be way more important now with the flood to be able to, right, like stay above it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to
Oh,
see.
it is. And the new writer has to focus on algorithms is how we get in front of readers. Where before it was, just a really good story. When I started out in this in 2013 and for the self-publishing side, I just needed a really good story and some good promotion, and I was able to get in front of readers. Now that won't get you on Amazon's front page at all. You have to tickle their algorithms in just the right little sweet spot. And
yep. It's a lot harder.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like everywhere is like, just to get my podcasting, it's like TikTok. I used to, if I share something with your book covers or whatever, with the same things I was doing like 2 months ago, 3 months ago with the hashtags and put it together, it's like I used to get like 200, 300 views. Now I'm at like 20 on average, the last couple of weeks. And it's crazy because I'm well over like the 1500, or whatever the 1000 is for their mark. Right. And it's nuts. And, I got like, I feel like the more views that I've gotten in the past, I feel like now I've really been reduced because I feel like they really want you to pay. And Twitter used to be really good for me on my podcast, Twitter. And then my author one was better. And then they flip-flopped, and now neither one, like, with the views, because I feel like X has really, done the same thing. So I think Facebook's been really hard. I think unless you're paying, it gets really difficult. So, like a lot of those book talk books, there's just not as many that have blown up recently, based off of TikTok was like, oh, hey, people are blowing up. Now we, have to change our algorithm again. So I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's been a lot more difficult to be seen in the algorithm for any of the social media sites, to be honest, including Amazon. So with the floods.
Yeah. And you make a good point about you got to use the money. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of self-published writers like me moving with the bulk of their lists through publishers who have bigger check accounts and things to help us get our books out there. So yes.
But I think that's also where you said, like, stepping up your game. Like, there are certain books where I've had people ask me, like my real good friends will be like, is this like a book you're going to publish yourself and self-publish, or is this something that, you're going to try to sell to somebody? And I do have specific things that I think will do really well. But like, if, I think somebody will take it eventually, depending on how it's written or, how I query it. But I definitely think that there are certain things that I will have to do at some point just to get other things generated. Because, even if it's not I actually, Andrea Stewart just talked to my students recently, incoming freshmen, which was so cool. I was geeking out really hard. But she was talking about like what her advance was for the Bone Shard's daughter and different things, and like how much they sold, and it was just absolutely crazy and really interesting, to kind of have her walk us through, like her process with a traditional publisher. But I was like thinking, like, I just need somebody to pay for enough for one book for another cover, for self-publishing. But I think it's interesting. Also listen to like Kevin J. Anderson talk about, what his advances used to be with Star Wars, versus like now, what somebody's offering him for an advance, and, different things like that. So it's definitely very interesting, I think, if you're looking at the hybrid publishing. But
yeah, times have changed. And they will keep changing.
Yeah. So I just want to mention, because you mentioned a couple different genres, but just for our audience, so what genres do you currently write in, and why did you choose these?
Okay, so I pretty much like anything speculative. I grew up comic books. I was 100% all in comic books. And then I started to branch out into the science fiction, fantasy books and novels. And then from there, as a kid, I read anything as voracious, but writing, it always has to have that speculative element. So yeah, my very first series was urban fantasy. And then the next one was kind of science fiction with romantic elements, then post-apocalyptic. And then I had some horror, then went into more pure sci-fi, working on fantasy series now. I've even done a little bit of nonfiction. So I really dabble in across the speculative world.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that in my stories. Pretty much all of my stories have a lot of those different elements all smashed in there. They're
Oh,
kind
cool.
of a genre stew. I mean, there's always
Yeah.
that primary one because I don't want to drive readers crazy and they'll be like, what is this? Is this science fiction? Is it fantasy? Is it horror? So yeah, it always has a primary one, but without a doubt, I like to squeeze in other little elements. Oh yeah, and I released a thriller earlier in the year. So yeah,
Oh,
it was
cool.
a little bit of everything.
Oh, that's awesome. I always love a
Ah,
stew. I like how you mentioned a stew, so I'm going to use that from now on. I will give you credit. But I always love a stew because like Richard Lee Byers, like Elaine Cunningham, I always really liked their Forgotten Realms books, but like they both did such a good job of like bringing in, like Elaine did one that was like a murder mystery, which was like a thriller, which was like and a mix of a thriller for a different one, like a zombie thing with fantasy. Richard was always throwing in horror in there. So I feel like even with fantasy, I was kind of like bred, I think, to for what I was reading, and the authors to really enjoy self-publishing with the stews that people were able to create. And now I just love like really unique stories. So I think it's just cool anytime you can see somebody, um, combine those different elements, into a different genre, like you were saying, and come up with a really cool story. I think that's where you get the best books from, personally. So I think
well,
it's
it
neat.
is because you get fresh storylines, even though you might get
Yes.
some of the same, tropes that we're used to. But so I'm reading Chris Rocchio's Sun Eater series right now.
Oh man, we're
Just
about to
finished
start that.
Empire of the I know, and that is phenomenal. It's my favorite series of the year, and
Awesome.
maybe of last couple of years. It's so good, and it's space opera, but yet it has a total dark fantasy vibe to it, epic fantasy. And so it's just so fun how it's all thrown together. And then of
Well,
course you have all the good little medieval the Roman Empire elements, and
yeah.
there's just a lot of fun. It's a good stew. I
Oh, that's
recommend it.
cool. That's why I
Yeah.
like the Pierce Brown. Like I met him actually at that same convention, and I was talking to him, and that's how he sold it to me. He's like, "Oh, you like what do you like?" I was like, "I'm a history teacher." And he's like, "Oh, so you like Romans?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "This mine's Romans in space," and I was like, "Okay, sold." so,
Yeah, and it
so,
was a good series.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Trust me, read Chris Rocchio's Sun Eater
Oh,
series.
I'm waiting for my buddy for book club, and I'm like, I mean, we have some other things. He was like, oh, like he's not as into to sci-fi, so I'm like slowly having to get him in. I recommended Dune, which I have to reread at some point because it's been decades. But yeah, he really liked that, so I got him like thinking now. He's like, okay, if we do, because we're almost done with Way of Kings, and then we're doing Liza Lagmora, and then I think we're gonna try and do that as like our third series, and then like flip out like books 1 and 2, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, I have it like on Kindle and Audible, like ready to go, and I have the physical one, so I am like
Oh,
ready on
good.
all accounts. So I've been trying to get him
Awesome.
like, hey, could we? Because we just got done with Malazan Book of the Fallen. So I was like, hey, this would be a good one. He's like, well, let's do some more fantasy first. I'm like, oh, dang it. So we're getting there. We're getting there, Christopher. If you're watching,
Good.
so hopefully
Yeah,
we'll.
audio is great on it. That's what I listened to the book on it. And I
Oh,
can't
perfect.
remember who the narrator was, darn it. Phenomenal. He did perfect on it.
I was gonna say you also talk about stepping up your game. Like narrators have just been like I've actually interviewed several narrators, and then I have two more that are coming in probably for our last episode for this season. And we're doing like kind of like a seminar thing. And I've just been so astounded at so many people, who narrate, who have just absolutely stepped up their game. I have just listened to so many great Audible books, like The Black Tongue Thief. Like Christopher's narrator was amazing. I really enjoyed, oh my God. I just finished another book that was really good. I loved it. Oh, The Halfling's Blade. Oh my gosh. I think it was like Melissa's her first name as the author. And that narrator like
Mhm.
stunned me. She was so amazing. And I love the book itself, but that was one of the few narrators that made me love the book even more, if that makes sense. So I feel
Yeah, oh
like I've
yeah.
listened to some amazing audiobooks lately. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
good. That's good to know.
I bought audiobooks just based on the narrator, which I know readers do that. I
Yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
narrators sell as many books as the author does a lot of times. So
Yep.
when that's the right name.
Well, look at Travis, right? Baldry, like there's so many that I loved of his, and if he's on there, I'm like, yeah, they're like, oh, it's $4 on Audible. I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely, I'll listen to it and read it. So
Yeah.
Travis sells more books for people for me because I'll do the Audible with my son when I'm with him, and then I'll also buy the Kindle. So yeah, he alone has sold so many more books for authors for both formats for me, and they don't even know it. So I think that's really cool. But
Yes.
well, that's really cool. I'm actually really looking forward to the Audible now. So I'm glad that you mentioned that one. That's really neat. So can you tell us about the books that you have written, and what are some of the favorites that you've written, and maybe why those are your favorites? I know you have quite a few, but I'm kind of curious that maybe some that you really enjoyed, or maybe there were some that you enjoyed writing, but because they were harder. But I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. All right. So that's a very good question because I do have my favorites, but kind of like Oscars, they're all in different categories.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah. So I think my first favorite book would have been 100 Days in Deadland, because that was the post-apocalyptic book that I wrote that I self-published. So it was the first one that I wrote completely however I wanted it. I wasn't thinking of like, oh, I got to get this to a publisher angle. It was just one that I was like, it's zombies. I'm just going to have fun with zombies. I mean, you can't not write zombies and have fun. And so, yeah, that was my first favorite book. And it showed in the writing. I think that's why it did so well is because they could tell I had a passion and wasn't trying too hard or anything. And it was just a blast to write. So it will always be one of my all-time favorites. I should probably do a spin-off trilogy
Oh,
because
that's cool.
we need more zombies.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. Then I think, so my writing's evolved, and one book that I tried like slightly different writing style on was my Bounty Hunter series. And that's that's a genre stew. Oh boy, that's kind of a post-apocalyptic science fiction, futuristic. It's almost Mandalorian meets Fallout. Um,
That's why I bought some of them.
cool.
I didn't even realize I actually was looking you up on Kindle, and then I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that I grabbed these a while back. So it's funny that you mentioned those. Those sounded awesome. I love the Mandalorian. So I was like, anything like that, I was like, that's really cool. I think I found them because somebody said that in a group I was in. And I was like, oh, I just, that was right when I finished one of the episodes or seasons I really liked. So I like went right away, and I had to find something similar. So I just want to point out to the audience, it doesn't matter who you are, right? Or what you write. If you're writing it and people want that thing, they will go and find that type of thing and that type of flavor. So that's really cool.
Yes. Yeah, having certain tropes or certain comps, it does help market it without a doubt. So 4 books are out now in that, but I feel like that was some of my best writing. I even inserted some Western feel to it because why not? But yes, there's 2 more books yet to finish the series arcs that I need to finish writing and get to Podium so they can do the audio on it. And
that's awesome.
And I loved it. It just went on a back burner because the books didn't sell quite as good as I'd hoped. So I had to focus on my other projects. Yep. But yes, I've got the last two books that I need to get written over the next year.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's see. Otherwise, I think storyline, my favorite was Space Junk. That's a epic science fiction, very space adventure. It has almost a manga feel to it. You're greater than life superhero. It's got, some of those kind of themes in there. But I just felt like that storyline, I'd worked out some of the details, and it was really good bit. It's kind of like Firefly times 1,000 in the universe thing. Awesome. Let's see, like Secondhand Spaceman, I mentioned that one earlier. That's a little novella series that not launched this spring on Kindle, and that was just campy fun. That was total, like, people probably thought I was drunk writing it type thing, but it was a blast, right?
Now I have to get them. Now I have to get
them. There you go. They're quick, easy reads. You can reach over your lunch hour, so it's nice awesome. And easy. Yeah, it's in a universe where humans are. So humans aren't considered like space travel yet. It's current day. So exactly, he's, poor Frank's taken away from the world as we know it today. Ends up in this sees all these aliens and all, where they finds out, oh, humans are really low on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And then of course Frank's unlucky in everything he does. So you can just imagine all the shenanigans that ensue. So it's a lot of fun. And then I've got another book that's coming out. I don't have a release date on it yet. It's been with my publisher for a while, but it's a superhero book called Judgmental. So that's his superhero name. It's a really lame name. But he, since I've loved comic books, it's kind of my ode to comic books. I always had to write a superhero fantasy.
Cool.
So,
I totally understand. I totally understand that. My buddy and I were doing a graphic novel years ago, and then I took some of it with me when I started to when I started to go to school to be an illustrator and stuff. But I've always wanted to go back, and I always was interested more, which I realized, in the writing than the drawing. So I always still want to do something with it. But I totally get that. The superheroes are just fun. So, yeah.
Oh, they are. They're a blast to write. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why Spider-Man still sells. I feel like no matter who there's one common thing between all of the students that I've had, and if they have read comic books, they've all enjoyed Spider-Man. And it's so interesting. It's like either Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, Miles Morales, but it's like it's such an interesting universe. I think it's cool because so many people can relate to those characters, and whether or not Peter's older or younger, we've all dealt with trauma and stuff. So I don't know. I always think he's like it's always like the spider people, as I call them now, are always the great multiplier, right? And unite people, because people are like, I don't like comics. I'm like, well, what about Spider-Man? Like, oh, I love Spider-Man. I'm like, we just said you didn't like comics. So I always find that they're like the superheroes that bring people together in the genre and get them interested. So it's cool.
Yeah, Spider-Man is great at that because it's a coming of age story about a guy who is an outcast in his mind. He's average Joe, perceivably, and we all feel that way. So it was just perfect. He relates to us so well because we're just like, oh yeah, I totally get you, Peter. And
yeah. I think that's why like Into the Spider-Verse was so good, and then they had other characters, and I think people really felt a lot for the different characters. I thought they did a great job of presenting each one, even though they were a Spider-Man or person, right? But then they were each very different in their own ways with their own flaws or strengths. And I just think that was like just really well done for both of the movies, really. I thought they did a really good job. I'm always like, dang, that was really good writing. So yeah, I can't wait for my son to be old enough to like understand them, and I know that he'll probably really enjoy them. But I always loved going into classes when I had kids and they're like, what did we do on the last day? And somebody would be like, oh, we're watching Into the Spider-Verse, and they're like, yes. So it was really cool. I worked at a school and we did like a movie theater thing, and that was the movie. And it was cool because they kind of did like a SEL PBL, but that's what that kind of things that we were talking about, right? Was like it brought up trauma, but it was like showed like a lot of the kids like got that you can, even though you had something bad happen to you, you can still do something great with it. And it made me feel really good about the superhero genre. So but I thought that was a really good example of good writing with it. But yeah, well, that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to that. I love superheroes, so I love anything that's superhero like in any way, shape, or form. My friend is yelling at me because I haven't finished The Boys yet. I just been really, really busy, but I'm doing my best, guys. I'm doing my best. But that's really cool. I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you for
sharing. The Boys is grim dark meets Batman. It's dark.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty up there. I think that's where I was like, I liked it, but I was like, I was like not really in the mood at that time, and I was looking for like I actually really liked Invincible. I felt like that was kind of more, even though it's like darker, right? But I felt like that like had its like lighter moments, if that makes sense, of triumph and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think I was like a little bit more into that. Maybe that's why I was at the time not as into certain parts of The Boys and stuff. And I think there were like some other stuff that came out that time too in the superhero genre that made me feel a little bit better. But then I got into like recently like Blue-Eyed Samurai and like a couple other things, and been on like a manga kick lately. So Masters of the Universe Revelations I thought was just like brilliant writing. So I've been kind of all over the place and trying to go back to Castlevania like season 2 and stuff. Season 1 I thought was just like absolutely amazing. So but yeah, I was kind of in the cartoons for a while there, but my wife's like, you watching cartoons? I'm like, it's really good writing though. Okay.
Yes. Oh, come on, like Star Trek Lower Decks and all that
Yeah.
phenomenal cartoons. Yeah. And
Yep. Yep. Yep.
anime has some pretty impressive stuff. Not kid friendly,
Yep.
but some pretty cool stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
storylines
Yeah.
out there.
Yep, I'm really excited because they're doing like a new Lord of the Rings anime. So I love Lord of the Rings. So I'm like really excited for that. And there was like a new superhero one too. I just saw recently. I forget what it was called, but I don't know. It seemed like almost like a Batman type thing, like a mix between Batman and Spider-Man. And it sounded really cool. So I'm like really looking forward to that. And I heard like Will White's was doing a Kickstarter for like Cradle too. So I hope that with the animation for that. So I'm really hoping to get to see that at some point. I was like, Will, take my money. Like, I got to be able to see this story, on the screen. But I think it's always
Yeah,
cool,
that
right? To see
story.
good stories. That
Yes, that story would be great on the screen.
yeah.
And it was on the anime side, I watched Harlock Space Pirate. It's an older one now, but after seeing that, that helped inspire my Space Junk series.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, just kind of
Okay.
background on that one.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really
I haven't
helped.
heard
I was
that.
like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
great. You can still watch the movie, I think on Prime, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. Tatiana Obey and I were talking about like a whole bunch that like influenced her for Sister Samurai. So I got really into watching a bunch of them at one time. But I'm gonna have to check that out. My friend has been really trying to get me to finish like Attack on Titan and stuff like that, and a couple other ones that he was really into. But yeah, I'll have to definitely check that out because I've not heard of that one. So I think I was in grad school at that time when all these came
Yeah.
out. So unless it was right before that, I like didn't really watch anything. But it's nice that right, you have Prime and stuff like that now, so it'd be really cool. But I'm kind of curious because you mentioned certain stories, but I'm kind of curious now, like in terms of characters, which characters have you written that maybe you found the most challenging, or maybe the most enjoyable to write?
Okay, yeah. So let's see, I just mentioned Space Junk. So that was Captain Jack Hale, who I said he was inspired by Jack
Oh,
Harlock,
that's cool.
the from the anime. And
Oh,
well,
that's
it
awesome.
is originally in a manga, but yeah, it was so he was a challenge to write, but also one of my favorites because it was almost an homage. I didn't want him to feel like a fan fiction of it by any means, but
Yeah, 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 yeah,
you've got this very strong, distant, tragic figure, and you don't want to make him feel tropey.
yeah,
You
yeah,
want to
yeah.
make him still feel alive and accessible. So that one, I think, because I want to do him right,
Mm,
because he was going to be this larger than life hero. I mean, he is
okay.
special, and so that one was a challenge. And I'd say other challenging ones and also fun ones to write was, so I said I released a thriller earlier in the year. It's
Mm,
called The Lazarus Key. And it's a story about it's kind of a sci-fi thriller or horror thriller.
cool.
This game warden, her name is Sam Brody. She works out in Wyoming. She's at Yellowstone Park and she gets called in on a big cat sighting. And it turns out to be a saber-tooth tiger that's roaming
Oh, that's cool.
Yellowstone. And there's in all other things, it's just normal today's world. But what it turned out to be is so a little bit of a letting you in on this. The secret is spoiler alert, the bad guy, the mad scientist in this is bringing back versions of these old animals. Obviously they're
Oh, that's
merged
cool.
in with like the American tiger and things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to use them for the ultra rich hunting
Oh, that's
safaris.
cool.
So that's kind of the premise of it. And but Sam was a challenge to write because she's a very strong woman. And a game warden, very independent. And so I didn't want her to feel like just, you see a lot of strong women that they're just a man with boobs. Didn't
Yeah,
want
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Also didn't want her to be some kind of like Mary Sue or trope on that. And so tried to make her be both, strong and real. So she was a challenge to write, but it was also really important to get her done correctly. So that was a challenge. And then I'd say another one that tested me in a different way is the hero in my Black Sheep books, Throttle Rain. She's a paraplegic,
Hmm.
and I don't, I'm fully abled, and I don't have
Yeah,
any experience on that. So that involved some more research and some more like sensitivity readers and things like
yeah.
that. So it was tricky to get it right. I mean, this was far future. So obviously there's things that are available that's not just wheelchairs.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have like prosthetic limbs that or braces that you can wear and those kind of things. So trying to do that and not feel like you're trying to erase, you know,
Yep.
being paraplegic, and so trying to do that right was a challenge. And so yeah, those were all challenging ones, but ones I really enjoyed doing too, because yeah, I mean that's half the fun of writing is being problem solvers. And,
Yeah, totally. Wow, those are really good examples. So, I always thought that that's an interesting question, right? Especially for someone like
it
yourself,
is.
who's written so many different characters. So, because I think you'll find a lot of people in those circumstances. Like I've had PTSD, but it's of a different nature than what I'm currently writing. And I have a military consultant who's a veteran and has some friends that are helping me with my current set of novellas. And that's not what I necessarily want the focus to be, but definitely in my first and second novella, it's like you got crazy stuff happening to you, and I feel like it's fair that the character would have that, But I totally agree with you. It's challenging to, um, to write that, and I'm also writing them in a way that celebrates, those people that have given their lives, for our country and who are veterans, but without celebrating necessarily like imperialism, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I totally get it. Like it's hard, right? You want to write something a specific way to teach a lesson or for a specific reason, and sometimes it's really challenging to get them right. And yeah, so I just wanted our audience to see some good examples, of some that you struggled with or challenges you had to overcome. So that way they can see some really good specific examples, because I think we all struggle, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about characters. We always talk about story, but I don't think enough people talk about characters or why they were hard, to write as authors, but also important to get right for the story or, for specific things we're trying to get across. So, but I think those are
Yeah, that's
really good examples. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's a great question because it is the characters make the story.
Yep.
You can have the most fantastic storyline together, but it's the characters who the readers fall in love with.
Yep.
And I've seen the mistake happen, especially with newer writers, where they try to make their main character, their hero, their protagonist, either an everyman or just so perfect. And characters are flawed. They should have flaws and be very human, even if they're superpowered.
Yep.
And because reviewers will even ding someone if they say something that might be like racist or sexist or something like that. And I'll be like, but if that fits the character's
Yep.
upbringing, you have to remember where, this character has an entire background that, how they're raised and everything, they should have certain flaws.
Yep.
And so it's nice to bring that out because then that opens up good debates. We're like book clubs that they can be like, okay, well, this character was a complete pig,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so talk about it.
Yep.
So yeah, I wish I've seen that mistake where sometimes writers try to make all of their characters too politically correct.
Yep. Yep.
Even especially if it's more current day type books, because I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh boy, yeah, there's all you have to do is go on Facebook for 5 minutes and see that that
Go see some of my
yeah.
family members on Facebook. Yeah, you'll definitely get some
Yeah.
interesting characters that are real life.
Yeah, that's the thing. So everyone's got different upbringings, different ways we're taught, or different beliefs, and so it makes the story so much richer when people bake that into the characters.
No, no, I totally agree. I think you make such a good point there, because it also makes the story, like if everybody is a Mary Sue, or I don't know. I always picture like Clark Kent from the really old, like the black and whites and everything on TV and stuff. And I don't know. It's just, it wasn't very exciting, right? I think. But then when you get him being Dean Cain, and they do some of the superhero stuff, but when you really look at the adventures of Lois and Clark, I thought Terry did such a good job with Dean to bring out the human side of Clark, and like there are times where Brandon Sanderson's talked about an episode where it's like you don't even really know what the superhero aspect is. It's only like 10% of the, 10 minutes out of the hour episode, but it's like this really human problem that Clark is having with Terry or whatever. and that was the more interesting piece, right? And I totally agree with you. I think if you really think of it that way, like I had a friend who was like, your main character needs to swear a little bit, or like needs a couple one-liners, and I don't really think that he would do this thing that he said he would do to help this person in this really horrible situation. And he comes up at one point and literally needs to like dangle a guy over a cliff, essentially, let's say. And he goes, I don't think he would do it, but I want to feel like he would do it. Like he would push the button if we really needed him to, or do the really hard thing. And I'm like, that's fair, So I totally agree with you. I think that it always makes a better story that way. And I think it's funny that you mentioned Facebook, because I think of so many instances, or TikTok, where I'm like, I've met that person or seen that person or whatever. So I think that makes total sense. And I think it always makes a better story. So that's really funny that you said that. It's been my experience. What do you think your biggest victory has come in terms of world building? Like, what would you say is like, oh, that was the coolest thing I did? And maybe which book or books do you feel that you nailed the world building for?
Yeah,
Or a setting?
yeah, and this one would be one of my series that's still coming out, so no one's read
Oh,
it
cool.
yet. It's Legion Quest, and it's my fantasy series. It's kind of science fiction fantasy, portal fantasy. I think my publisher is going to market it as kind of game lit, because Athon's known for
Cool.
kind of their
Yep.
RPG game lit.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's this one I spent the most time on world building because it's so epic. I read tons of, well, I subscribe to World Building magazine, and it's a free subscription. I highly recommend it to every writer out there because these guys are phenomenal.
Definitely
They
checking
do a
that out.
very professional grade magazine. Yeah, it's all, and it's PDF. It comes out, I think, quarterly, and they even have a like Discord server and all. But these guys, they do more world building. I think it started with the D&D and tabletop, and they cover all of the aspects. But anyway, Legion Quest is, and I'll give a few spoilers in this, is so this poor guy, he wasn't a Marine or anything, but he was a Boy Scout. But he gets pulled in to test this new game. He's a big time gamer, and he ends up in this Dungeons and Dragons style Earth that seems so realistic. And the spoiler part is, okay, he's not playing a game, he's in a game, he's an NPC. All of us, this Earth is an NPC. And we're all inside this game of millions of parallel Earths, where every
Oh,
Earth
that's
is
cool.
a different thing. So like Dungeons and Dragons, you've got the Vikings Earth, you've got the Roman Empire Earth, all of the fun, the Mongolian Earth, all kinds of fun, different Earths to focus on. And towards the end of book one, our hero is going to realize all this. And so the series, his goal then becomes finding the makers of the game, because when there's a game upgrade, a lot of times all the old Earths can be wiped out, which
Oh,
would
wow.
then be Armageddon to our planet. And so we'd all be gone. So his goal is to try to find the game makers and prevent that from happening before it happens. So anyway, I guess that's kind of a tangent, but
That was super
so
cool tangent.
I had to work out, at least the first dozen Earths of what they're going to be, everything from maps, culture, government, the mythos, the religions, the marriages, what's legal there, what's the militaries look like. I tried to work out all of those for every single Earth, even though each book will only focus on one.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the biggest challenge, but I also think it was the most fulfilling to do, because I feel like it's, I always have fun doing world building. I do all my world building and characterization bios and stuff up front before I start a book. So this one I've been doing a lot playing with. And so
Yeah.
yeah, Legion Quest is kind of I think my favorite when it comes to world building.
Oh, super cool. Where would you say like maybe one like place would be that you've created so far? It could be, in any book that you would want, like you would have to visit. Like what's a place you created that you were like, I have to go to that place. Like if I had the ability, I would have to go there. I'm just kind of curious.
I'd have to say with Legion Quest, it'd probably be the Dungeons and Dragons Earth that I just wrote.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it's Dungeons and Dragons.
That's fair. No, say no more, Rachel.
Yeah. It just you got to.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I feel like that answer is totally accepted on the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Next podcast. So That's really cool. Who was like maybe one character that you've created that you're like, if I could go on an adventure with them, I would have to go on an adventure with this person. Like, you think it would be exciting or just like interesting? I'm just curious that like, who would your ride or die be for going to the end of the galaxy, or going to your version of Mordor? Like, who's the one person you're like, I would have to go on an adventure with them?
Hmm. I would say probably Captain Jack in the Space Junk, the Waymaker Wars series, just because it's going to be an adventure. I mean, they travel beyond what any humans see. They,
Oh, that's
because
cool.
they can live longer. They've got the nanites in their blood. So everything is just bigger and more expanses with them, and guarantee any adventure they're going to have is going to be, the first book they saved the solar system, next one is saving, the galaxies, and the ones after
Okay.
that is universes, and there's just so much going on with them. So yeah, that'd be a really cool adventures, plus him and his crew, they're just cool.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fair, right? If they're a crew, it's a good answer because you'd have to go with him and then the crew, and it'd be probably more exciting adventure in the long run. So I see what you did there. I like that. Be like, I got to go with Kirk, right? Because I'd be on the
Yeah.
Enterprise. Like, that'd just be really cool.
Yes.
All right, that's a good answer. That's awesome. So we're kind of winding down on time here, Rachel. We had some great answers, and now I have to check out this world building like magazine and everything in Discord. It just sounds awesome, and I love world building. So I'm a world building geek. So I'm gonna have to check that out. So that alone was an awesome answer. But I'm just kind of curious that do you have any news, updates, or current projects that you can share with us?
Oh wow, yeah, it's been busy. So the thing that happens when you become a full-time writer is well, you're writing full-time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got the Redline Core series, science fiction series coming out through Aethon Books. First book comes out October 8th. So all three books will probably come out this year. I should wrap up book 3 and get to them by the end of this month.
Oh, cool.
Then the Legion Quest series, I also signed 3 books with Aethon. That's that Portal Fantasy gamelet. That one, they've got the first book. I've got 2 more to write under contract for them. So I don't have a release date yet. I would think by the time I turn in the second book, I'll have a release date on that. And I'll be working on book 2. Hopefully get that done by early September if it all goes well. So,
Yeah.
and then let's see. Yes, Judgmental, no release date on the superhero yet, but it is there with my editor. So kind of excited to see how that happens, because all of these are different audiences.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. Yeah.
And then yes, I have 2 other projects in the works, both I can't talk about yet, both that would involve kind of co-writers, which would be pretty exciting stuff, because I've co-written a series with Jamie McFarland before. He's a good friend.
Oh, cool.
And we had a blast doing it. And so, yeah, when opportunities arise to do more co-writing with, other authors, I always consider them seriously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So yeah,
Well,
that's it for now.
yeah, I was gonna say that's like a lot, right? For any publisher, whether it's indie, traditional, or hybrid. So yeah, that's quite a bit on the horizon. But that's really cool. I knew when I had sent you that question, I was like, Rachel's got a lot going on right now. So because I saw a couple posts here and there on a couple different things. So I was like, it'll be interesting. But you did a good job filling it in there and getting it all together. I'm impressed. I would have probably forgotten something. So but that's
yeah,
awesome.
I've got hopefully this year, if I can meet my target dates, I'll get at least 8 books written this year, and
Oh, that's
at
amazing.
least that many next year. So it is fast paced, but you've got to kind of do that if you're going to be a writer who primarily sells on Amazon and
Yep.
audio.
Yep. Yeah. No, totally, for sure. I just want to remind. So sorry. I want to remind our audience. Almost forgot you guys. I was really like, oh, I've got to get this world building magazine before I forget. But don't forget, you can find all of Rachel's social and book links in the description anywhere where you are watching or listening to the audio for this podcast. And please just don't forget, our main focus the last 2 seasons has been to review any products from any author creator. That way, like Rachel, for instance, right, helps out her narrators on Audible. It helps out cover artists, editors, typographers, all these different people. And it just helps Rachel out in the long run. And it helps you guys get more of Rachel's books, which is what we all want.
Mhm.
I always say it's a selfish endeavor as a reader because I really just want more of the product. But please don't forget to do that. Thank you so much. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast. I can't wait to have you back in the future, and see where, these 16 books get you, and kind of check in a little bit in the future and kind of see your process and the progress of these different series, particularly in different genres. I think will be really cool. I always like to take little snapshots for people and kind of see where they're at. I wish I had done that years ago when I first had met some of these indie authors that are now like crazy legends already, and it'd be interesting to see where your different books end up the next couple months. And I'm really excited to get to some bounty hunting, those two that are out that I got. But I'm definitely gonna have to go with the campy sci-fi. That's just one of my things. So I'm really excited to go and download those and get through as many as possible. I have DR Scholl, his Galactic Culinary Society. I highly recommend. I think you'd find it really funny, and they're really campy and just like classic. So that's like right up my alley. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate you coming on today. And I really look forward to talking in the future as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This
Anytime.
was fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Anytime I come back, you just let me know and we'll get you on
Will
and,
do.
see where you're currently at with your works. But other than that, Rachel, I'll, be emailing you shortly for your release date and everything and send you your links. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of the day and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. You take care too.
Thank you. You too. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.